The forest breathed around me, a living entity exhaling secrets in every gust of wind. The moon, a ghostly eye in the inky sky, barely penetrated the dense canopy, leaving the world below bathed in an ethereal, unsettling glow. My red sweater, a beacon in the gloom, felt strangely out of place. The snowflakes embroidered on its fabric mocking the chilling lack of snow. I was a splash of color. In a monochrome nightmare, a vibrant anomaly that somehow felt right. I ran a hand through my unruly hair, feeling the dampness of the mist clinging to the strands. It wasn't just damp, it was cold, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones and whispered of things not meant for human ears. A shiver, not entirely from the temperature, ran down my spine. I'd been drawn here, too. This place, by something I couldn't explain. It was a tug, a magnetic force pulling at the edges of my reality, a promise of something more than the mundane. The fog swirled at my feet, an opaque curtain concealing the path ahead. The trees, ancient and towering, were gnarled sentinels guarding their silent domain. Their branches, skeletal fingers reaching skyward, seemed to writhe in the dim light. It was a scene ripped from the pages of a forgotten fairy tale, one written not for children's amusement, but as a warning. And yet, I couldn't turn back. The pull was too strong. I took a step forward, the crunch of fallen leaves beneath my boots the only sound that dared to break the oppressive silence. The scent of pine, thick and earthy, filled my nostrils, mingled with a metallic tang that sent a prickle of unease through me. It was the scent of iron, of blood, and something else, something acrid and unnatural. As I walked deeper into the forest, the fog thickened, swallowing the moonlight completely. I was enveloped in a grey void, my visibility reduced to barely a few feet. The dancing snowflakes on my sweater became my only anchor, a swirling reminder that I was still, somehow, tethered to the ordinary. But the ordinary felt distant, almost fictional, in this reality of whispering shadows and unseen horrors. I started to hear noises, faint at first, like the rustling of leaves. But they grew in intensity, morphing into whispers that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath me. They were voices, murmuring in a language I didn't understand, yet somehow felt intimately familiar with. They spoke of pain, of loss, of a terrible hunger that could not be satisfied. I pressed on, not out of bravery, but a morbid curiosity that I couldn't control. The path, or what I assumed was the path, twisted and turned, leading me further into the heart of the wood. The trees grew closer now, their branches intertwining overhead, creating a suffocating canopy that felt like a cage. I felt as if the forest itself was breathing down my neck, its gaze fixed upon me, waiting. Then, I saw it. A clearing bathed in an unearthly luminescence. The fog thinned here, revealing a circle of smooth, grey stones, each one marked with strange symbols that seemed to writhe and shift before my eyes. In the center of the circle stood a single, gnarled oak, its branches twisted into grotesque shapes that looked like tormented limbs. And beneath its boughs, something moved. It was a figure, tall and gaunt, draped in what looked like tattered rags. Its head was bowed, the long, stringy hair obscuring its face. A low, guttural moan emanated from it, a sound that scraped against my eardrums and sent icy tendrils crawling through my veins. I wanted to run, to flee back the way I had come, but my legs felt heavy, rooted to the spot by some unseen force. I was an observer now, a witness to something ancient and terrible, a ritual being played out beneath the watchful eyes of the silent woods. The figure began to move, slow and deliberate, its limbs jerking in unnatural ways. It raised a hand, the fingers long and bony, and I saw, with a sickening lurch in my stomach, that its nails were not nails at all, but sharp, curved claws. It was then that the smell intensified, the metallic tang becoming overwhelming, and I finally understood what the acrid smell was: decay, rot, the smell of something that should have been dead for centuries. The figure raised its head then, and for the first time, I saw its face. Or rather, what was left of its face. It was a hollowed mask of bone and rotting flesh, the eye sockets empty pits filled with a swirling, inky blackness. But the worst was the mouth, a gaping maw filled with rows of jagged teeth that looked as if they'd been carved from bone. It was a face ripped from the depths of a nightmare. The kind of face that follows you into your waking hours. And it was looking at me, directly at me, as if I was the only thing that existed in its horrifying universe. The figure reached out a hand, its claws scraping against the ground, and I finally broke free from the invisible chains that had held me captive. I turned and ran, crashing through the undergrowth, not caring where I was going. Only that I had to get away. The whispers intensified, echoing in my ears, chasing me through the fog. I could feel it behind me, a cold, malevolent presence, its breath hot and putrid on my neck. I stumbled, falling to the ground, the impact knocking the wind out of me. I looked back, and there it was, silhouetted against the faint light of the moon, its form towering over me. It was not running, it was walking, moving with a slow, inexorable purpose, like a nightmare come to life. I closed my eyes, waiting for the inevitable, bracing myself for the pain. But instead of claws sinking into my flesh, I felt a strange, tingling sensation, an electric current that surged through me from the tips of my toes to the crown of my head. I opened my eyes, and it was gone. Or, rather, everything was gone. The clearing, the circle of stones, the twisted oak, the figure, all vanished, as if they had never existed. I was alone, back in the fog-shrouded forest, the only sound the frantic thumping of my heart. I stood up, my limbs trembling. The red sweater, which had been a beacon of defiance, now felt like a heavy weight, a reminder of what I had seen. The snowflakes on its surface no longer seemed to dance, but rather, to stare at me with empty, accusing eyes. I turned and ran, not towards the path, but in a random direction, desperate to escape the grip of the forest. I ran until I couldn't run anymore, until I collapsed, breathless and exhausted, against the trunk of a tree. The forest had released me, for now, but I knew it would never truly let me go. It had shown me its secrets, its horrors, and I would carry them with me, a permanent stain on my soul. The world felt different now, tainted, as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface of reality. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I would never be the same again. The adventure I had sought had found me. And it had not been what I had expected. It had been a glimpse into the abyss, a terrifying reminder of the unknown horrors that lay hidden just beyond the veil of the ordinary. I touched the snowflakes on my sweater, their delicate patterns now imbued with a sinister meaning. I was no longer just a man in a red sweater. I was a witness, a carrier of secrets, forever bound to the whispering woods. And that, I knew, was a horror far worse than anything I had seen.